Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. In this segment, I'm just going to be running through the 2022 NBA Finals and trying to go round by round and seeing who I think can win it all, or at least possibilities and outcomes of this playoff. So let's get into it.
What the dog doing?
There are 16 NBA teams competing for the ultimate prize, but I would say that not all teams are created equal. These are my 6 NBA teams that I could see actually have a legit chance at winning the title. The Warriors. The Warriors are healthy again. They have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, coached by Steve Kerr, and then that young rookie, Jordan Poole, with also help off the bench. The Milwaukee Bucks. They are the defending champs for a reason. They won it last summer. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a superstar. He also has help from his secondary of Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. Even though they are the 3 seed in the East, I would not be surprised to say, hey, the Milwaukee Bucks are the 2022 NBA champions. The Miami Heat. These are not the Miami Heat of yesterday with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh running through the East. This is the Jimmy Butler-led Miami Heat with Bam Adebayo, Victor Oladipo, and Kyle Lowry, with Tyler Hero coming off the bench. I think the Miami Heat have turned a lot of heads by being the number 1 team in the East and playing a lot of heavy basketball, and I think this playoff can be a really big indication for them to gain some respect and not be that team that played in the Mickey Mouse bubble championship.
And I want my damn respect too.
I personally am a Miami Heat and Oklahoma City Thunder fan, but it has been awesome to rekindle that fanhood after watching Jimmy Butler's last couple years with the Miami Heat and turning that culture and that team around. The Boston Celtics, the 3-headed monster of Jason Tatum, Brown, and Smart. Not a lot of people see this team going far, but honestly, they are a huge dark horse contender. They are the 2 seed in the East. The Boston Celtics obviously have a rich history of titles. Maybe this could be the year that Jason Tatum finally wins his first one. Number 5, the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns do not have the best NBA roster. That belongs to the Lakers. Oh wait, they do have the best league-wide record. If they do not let history repeat itself where they melt in crucial games, I can see this being the year where they finally hoist the trophy and erase all the curses that the Suns probably never even had. The Brooklyn Nets. And the only reason why I say the Brooklyn Nets are contenders for the title is because of the 2-time Finals MVP, Kevin Durant. With, if he is able to play, Kyrie Irving. Those are 2 of the top 10 NBA players in the league right now, and so that's got to count for something, so I would not count the Nets out. Okay, just as a point of reference, like this is what my brain thinks, and this is what my brain went through to try to predict like the outcomes of all these series. Suns and the Pelicans, I was incorrect. I thought the Clippers could win the play-in, and so I had the Clippers versus the Suns, even though it didn't matter. Kawhi Leonard has not played this season, and all they had was Paul George. I still had the Suns in 5. And versus the Pelicans and CJ McCollum, I still think the Suns are way too much, and so I have the Suns in 5. Staying in the West, I have the Mavericks versus the Utah Jazz. There are questions on injuries with the Mavericks with Luka, and even if the Mavericks were fully healthy and they did have Luka, I still think the Utah Jazz are favored in this matchup, and I think the Jazz can be a little too much. And so as my first biggest matchup series of the whole playoffs, I have the Jazz and the Mavericks going the distance. I have them in 7 games. I have the Utah Jazz ultimately winning, though. I don't think Luka alone can power the Mavericks over the Jazz. Golden State Warriors versus the Denver Nuggets. The Warriors are healthy again. They have Steph Curry back. They have Klay Thompson back, Draymond Green, Jordan Poole, all coached under Steve Kerr. I think the Warriors are too much with their experience also as well. Joker can't carry this team, all by himself and try to beat the star-studded roster of the Golden State Warriors. So I have the Warriors and Nuggets having a really good series, but ultimately the Warriors getting it done in 6. Memphis Grizzlies versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is a young Grizzlies team. They've shocked a lot of people by being the number 2 seed in the West. Ja Morant is having an incredible season. And personally, one of my favorite big men, Steven Adams, over there as well. I think the Grizzlies can get it done versus the T-Wolves in at most 6, if not 5. I don't think that Cat and Patrick Beverley's stingy defense is enough to stop this Memphis Grizzlies team. And so I have the Grizzlies moving on. The Miami Heat versus the Atlanta Hawks. These are the Atlanta Hawks that were in the Eastern Conference Final last year with Trae Young. They had a struggling season, to say the least. I just think with the star power and the new additions of Kyle Lowry, the Miami Heat will be a little too much for Trae Young to handle. And I can see the Miami Heat taking care of business and beating the Hawks in 6, if not 5. I have the Heat moving on. Philadelphia 76ers versus the Toronto Raptors. These are not the 2019 title winners with Kawhi Leonard. These are the Toronto Raptors that have been disassembled and taken apart. The only 2 superstars that remain are Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet against the 2 superstars in Philadelphia of Joel Embiid and new addition James Harden. Superstar versus superstar, I would take James Harden and Embiid over VanVleet and Pascal Siakam. I do see this being a long series though, and I do see the 76ers beating the Toronto Raptors in 7. If, and this is a big if the Toronto Raptors still had Kawhi Leonard, oh, get out of here. Raptors all the way. The Milwaukee Bucks versus the Bulls. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton with DeMar DeRozan putting the team back on the map, with also help from Levine, Ball, and that young stud out of Illinois. Can I see the Chicago Bulls beating the Milwaukee Bucks? No. But I do see it being a good series, and I can see the Bulls trying to play upset, but ultimately the Bucks winning the series in 6 games. Another intriguing matchup that I have in the first round is the Boston Celtics versus the Brooklyn Nets. Honestly, this series is too hard for me to predict. There are a lot of question marks following the Brooklyn Nets. We know this. With missing pieces like James Harden and Kyrie Irving for the majority of the season, what honestly could have been at the Brooklyn Nets? I know personally for myself, I predicted them to be in the 2020 and also the 2021 NBA Finals, but we don't want to talk about that. The Boston Celtics, led by Smart Brown and Jason Tatum, I think that big 3 could take down the one Kevin Durant. But the missing piece and the factor in all of this is Kyrie Irving. Will Kyrie Irving be allowed to play in all the games? If Kyrie Irving is allowed to play, I do see, sadly, the Nets winning in 7. Personally, for me, I would love to see the Boston Celtics beat the Nets and get KD out of the playoffs, because I'm kind of tired of Kevin Durant. But for me, this is the hardest series to predict because it could go either way. As much as my heart wants the Celtics to move on, I see the Brooklyn Nets moving on in 7. Phoenix Suns versus the Utah Jazz. I think the Utah Jazz will be the biggest competition to that point for the Phoenix Suns. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and Mike Conley. Just the problem is, I'm from Utah. The Utah Jazz have been, and they have not been good since the John Stockton and Karl Malone days. And just like in true Utah fashion, I think the pressure will be too much and they will fold like a wet napkin. I can see this being a series where the Jazz go up 2-1, but then fall in 6. The Suns have too much star power with Devin Booker, Bridges, Ayton, Chris Paul. To me, the Suns are just too much for the Utah Jazz to try to beat. And I don't hate the Utah Jazz. Personally, I love Donovan Mitchell. I remember watching highlights of his dunk contest back in 2018. And as a Utah native, I'm like, wow, this kid's actually going to turn the Utah Jazz around. Just there's one big thing, and it's they do not have that A-list super NBA star on the team just yet. And nobody wants to move to Utah anyway. So, Suns in 6. Golden State Warriors versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Not necessarily a Golden State Warriors fan, but a Steph Curry fan. Honestly, this series scares me the most. As a young and hungry Ja Morant-led Memphis Grizzlies team, I can see the Grizzlies putting the Warriors on the brink of elimination. The only key thing that I see that can turn the tide around for this matchup is the Warriors and their playoff experience and their titles that they have already had. Yes, they don't have Kevin Durant, yet this is still Steph Curry and Klay Thompson we were talking about. I could see the series going either way, with the Grizzlies winning or the Warriors winning, but for this, I will pick the Golden State Warriors in 7, if not 6. The Miami Heat versus the Philadelphia 76ers. I think Miami Heat having the advantage in the series, but also having home court advantage if it potentially gets to a Game 7 will be too much for Embiid and James Harden. James Harden has had a history of playoff meltdowns and not being able to perform. And I'm not one to hate on the former MVP. There will be a game or two where the moment's too big and he won't show up. The most successful thing to come out of Philadelphia were the Philadelphia Eagles. The 76ers are not going to get past the Heat. I have the Heat moving on in 6. Milwaukee Bucks versus the Brooklyn Nets, a rematch of last year. I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to give the Nets the opportunity to try to breathe in this series. I think Milwaukee is going to come out with a 2-0 lead, 2-1, and then a 3-1 lead, and bring the Brooklyn Nets season to a close. Like I mentioned earlier with question marks, I don't think Kevin Durant alone can beat the defending champs. And so I have the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Brooklyn Nets. For the Western Conference Finals, I have the Suns versus the Warriors. I can see this being a series that goes 2-2, 1-1-1. I can see the Suns taking games 1 and 2. I can see the Warriors evening up the series. And then I can see the Suns on the brink of trying to beat the Warriors, but then Steph Curry and Klay Thompson turn it on, and they're able to take Game 6 and Game 7. I have the Warriors moving on to the NBA Finals. For the Eastern Conference Final matchup, I have the Heat versus the Bucks. This too is also hard for me to try to predict. I would like to see the Miami Heat beat the Milwaukee Bucks, but their personal playoff series in the last few years is split even. Miami Heat beat the Milwaukee Bucks back in 2020. Milwaukee beat the Miami last year. I do think if Giannis does get hot, he'll be too much for the Miami Heat to try to contain and stop. And I can see this being a classic Eastern Conference Final series and going the distance in a 6 or 7 game series, ultimately with the Milwaukee Bucks winning. Personally for me, just based off my favorite teams, I would want to see a Warriors versus Miami Heat NBA Finals. I think the Bucks can return to the NBA Finals and beat the number 1 seed, Miami Heat. So the first NBA Finals matchup that I do see happening is the Warriors versus the Bucks. A classic finals series that goes 1-1-1-1-1-1 all the way to Game 7 or 2-2-1-1-1. So those are my predictions for the 2022 NBA playoffs. Nothing is set in stone and we don't know what's actually going to happen because injuries are prone, same with buzzer beaters or people blowing series leads. If you look at the history as a whole of the finals too, it usually is decided because of a team's injured player or something that happened earlier in the playoffs. So it's bound to happen. I just hope that it's a good playoffs and it's something to look back on and celebrate. If you liked videos like this, be sure to stay tuned. I'm finishing up an MLB season prediction video. I'm simulating through the whole MLB season. I'm going to predict Golden Glove winners, who's winning their division, Cy Youngs, etc., etc. Who knows, maybe even trying to set up a playoff format and go all the way to the World Series. I don't know, but I'm finishing up that video, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, have a good day. Jeez, look, freaking Louise, holy cow.